Hey guys, back again with Burning Platform. This time I have Fred Goff, CEO of Jobcase, which calls itself a people-first social platform built to help you improve and manage your work life. Fred, great to have you. Tell us a little bit about yourself. I know you've had an amazing career, Wall Street, and then now in the whole employment side business, and I'm sure a bunch of other things. So tell us a little bit about yourself and about Jobcase.
Well, I appreciate being here, Vinnie. It's a pleasure getting to know you, and I appreciate the time. Tell me about myself. I'm a first generation college grad from Toledo, Ohio. My dad was an insurance agent, and my mom was a stay-at-home mom. And went to Carnegie Mellon, went to MIT. I was a trader and a hedge fund guy trying to harness artificial intelligence in hedge funds. And then we had a machine learning based hedge fund that worked really well until maybe it didn't so much. We weren't a blow up, but we didn't see the Lehman bust coming. And we took a lot of the team and technology out of that 2009 experience, and we brought it into consumer internet space. And initially we were focused on, people are going to need a lot of jobs here. So we started focusing on the job space. And then in 2014-15, we really got focused, my co-founders and I, on what would now be called the future of work problems and the inequities in capitalism, and thinking about, wouldn't it be great if we could democratize big data and machine learning and really give it to the power, kind of back to the people? How could we form a company that really thinks about workers first and how to empower them and how to advocate for them, and et cetera? And really thinking about this notion of the elements of the future of work are going to be extremely daunting, and they're going to be very difficult for you unless you lean in. If you lean in, it could be wonderful. I think you and I have talked about, if you're a cashier, you might lose your job because of AI, but it's also making online education possible to go get a medical billing job or something. So you need a platform for that. And we developed Jobcase to be a platform where there's tools that allow you to keep all your stuff, not just your profile. Think about like a portable employee folder, so you can have frequent movement and changes of jobs, and remove friction from that. But the most important thing is a community to help you figure out and achieve that next step. It's both connections, advice, but there's a lot of emotional support. It's really tough out there. And so that's really one of the differentiating, kind of the killer app of Jobcase is empathy of people for each other. And since then, we've had a lot of success in achieving a lot of scale.
I like the differentiation. I've heard you say LinkedIn focuses on college degree employment, and you are focused more on baristas and retail and
80% of the country, yeah.
80% of 80%, wonderful. But I'm a big fan of micro dirty jobs, right? I mean, there's so many jobs in this economy that don't get attention, but they're the backbone of our society. So I'm glad you're doing that. It must be very different though than social platforms in the white collar world. Seem to be it's part of our fabric. What are you finding in the trade and other jobs that you have your audience with, your demographics with?
I think that it is, I do find it a little different, Vinny. It's hard not to make the comparison to LinkedIn. And I'm a big fan of LinkedIn. I'm a huge fan of Reed and Jeff and what they built, and I'm an avid user of it. But it's a different purpose. It's first and second degree connections and knowledge workers. When we built Jobcase, we were as much informed by Quora and Reddit as we're LinkedIn or Facebook. It's because as you're thinking about what to do next in work, the universe of consideration set, especially as you have not developed and put that sunk cost into any specific kind of educational chain, it's really large and vast. And so that discovery and that raw community is really what's needed. And so our technology connects you with people you don't know. And we've been using the word community since we launched this in 2014-15, and that's really the difference. And so I think that if I have the pleasure of hosting you here in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and you come to our headquarters, we've got our members on all around the office, and their faces on one side and quotes on the other. And I'm remembering Jesse in particular, and Jesse was a veteran who had fought in Fallujah in heavy combat, and he put a quote on saying about Jobcase, he hasn't felt camaraderie like this since he was in the service. Now, if you think about how deep that is, this fellow is equating talking with somebody he doesn't know across the country about a job search or about how to get trained up. he's equating that support with somebody covering him under live fire in combat. I mean, that's how deep people feel about the concerns about the future of work, and especially as Americans. I think we mix our identity with our career sometimes. And that's really the differentiation that we see, that it's not enough to say, oh, do you know somebody at Walmart to introduce me to for a job? But quite often what you really need is, if you're facing ageism, somebody else saying, that happened to me too, don't give up, try this company, they'll hire you. Those kind of empathetic help on navigation, or even, I know you don't know any nurses, you can do it, I believe in you. Things like that are very impactful to somebody's career path. That's really what I see is different about empowering workers.
Sounds very practical, like you say, a lot of empathy at that level.
Yeah, and I think that it's very tactical. We become very good friends with Joe Fuller and the whole group over at Harvard, and he's much more eloquent at describing it than I am. But there's academic studies that back up this notion of how empathy is needed for people as they try to provide gain upward mobility. It's not enough to know what to do or whatever, but to actually affect it, having feedback loops, and it doesn't have to be close. It's just other humans that give you the feedback loops and encouragement are wildly important.
So I always tell young people, I don't know too many hungry carpenters or electricians or plumbers, right? In fact, I was I've been presenting somewhere, and a young college graduate walked up to me and said, "Hey, Vinnie, how do I get into the technology business?" And I said, "Will you take my advice? We have just had a hurricane in Puerto Rico and so on, and Houston." And I said, "Go work in one of those cities for a couple of years. Take the money, take the savings, and then you can retrain yourself." He was shocked. He was like, "I don't want to do that. I want to just go in and get a white collar job," right? It just seems like, how do we change that? Because there's so many good paying jobs that people either don't know about, to your point, or don't seem to want. Do you see that changing at all?
I do. I'm actually, silver linings, right? If we come out of this horrible time period the world's been in with COVID and quarantine, you look at like silver linings, and I think that there is a big rethink on education and work life and relationships between what people want in careers and et cetera, and even a reassessment. As everyone who's been in college is all of a sudden forced to everybody's online. I think there's a moment here that's pretty powerful, and I think we're going to look back 10 years from now and see an adjustment that to your point is probably going to finally rebalance. I think that you're spot on. One of our huge talking points is not everybody should go to college. There's great paths in so many different ways, and quite frankly, if you get a welding certificate, you might have way more earning power and stability than having a communications degree. I mean, where did this come from that everybody has to go to a 4-year experience and sit in desks and learn in this way? That's not rational for everyone. It's not good or bad. It's just a different avenue. So I think that's really what we have to do is resurface the dignity of other types of work and stop indexing the college path as being like better somehow. It's better for some people, not better for others, right? And so I'm really thrilled that you are advocating the trades, because we also know, you and I, from the work we do in future of work kind of initiatives, AI is not displacing the trades. If you're in a trade, you're perfectly fine for the next 30, 40 years. If you are an analyst or communications or radiologist or paralegal or financial analyst, yeah, you better be worried about AI. So even the trends in terms of earning power and stability of work argue for what you're saying. And I think there's an awakening now, because COVID has forced upon us an ability to reassess and almost a license to be able to reassess. And I don't think we're going back to the pressures that we had before, is my bet. I think that's healthy. I think it's healthy.
I'm a geek, so I like to read Bureau of Labor Statistic reports. Dry as hell, but it's fascinating. We have one of the best job economies in the world, 800 plus occupations. So as a labor worker, employee, there's so much mobility across states, so much mobility across jobs. It just seems like people have fixated opinions. I got to do this. I got to do this, and I got to do this for the rest of my life. No, you don't. You can move around, right? And I was in Wyoming recently, fascinated with some of the mountain men who made the state, right? And they would do mining, and then they would do fishing, and they would be in hunting, and so nothing was guaranteed for them. Whatever the opportunity was, they took advantage of it. I think we need to get back to that mindset. A lot of opportunities. We just need to be able to be mobile.
I agree. And you're really getting to one of the reasons that we launched Jobcase, because I think there's two elements coming together that cause a problem about the elements you're saying. There's one angle, which is kind of the Dan Ariely jars in a grocery store thing. There's too much choice for some people, right? There's so many things that we can do today. It's the old thing, if you have 20 jam jars, consumers won't buy any. If you have 3, they'll buy 1, right? So it's too many choices. The other aspect, though, I think, Vinnie, is it's a very natural thing that people are busy, right? They're just like, life gets busy. It's consumed by, our social media, and it's hard to get the space. And so what I see, I have a niece that's just going to college who I love dearly, brilliant girl, huge future in front of her. And when you say, what do you want to do? Or what are you thinking of studying? She's like, I don't know. I want to do what my mom does. And which is great. Like, maybe that's her path. But it's not like she's saying, well, I know there's like 40 different things I could do, and I really want to choose that. And so I think the challenge here is, how do we take this abundance, this age of abundance we live in, and make it manageable, make it navigable? Have somebody say, here's an assessment that we do. And from this assessment, oh, that's interesting. You have interest in this, or from your current experience, you have these skills. Here's a heat map of this might be interesting to you. And if you click this button, say, I don't know, emergency room nurse, here's the path you need to do to get there. I think that people are thirsting for that. That's our agenda with Jobcase. That's our vision of where we're heading, that we're building this. How do we help people navigate? Because the difference between us and the mountain men you talk about is they didn't have so much choice, right? They had to iterate, they had to hill climb and just make it work. We get to hill climb with massive abundance of choice. So how can we help you navigate that? And that's what we're trying to do at Jobcase.
So let's touch on your Wall Street background and how that impacts the market, right? I don't know about you. I'm scared to death. Our national debt has gone up quicker than ever before in the last year. And this administration is obviously adding to that, right? So what I worry about is very little of that has gone towards true infrastructure or producing plant, right? Productive plant. Much of it has gone to consumer spending. Okay, so we're feeding the demand side, not enough of the supply side. What does that mean from a labor perspective? What does that mean for the economy in general? And then what does it mean from a labor perspective?
Boy, I appreciate you referenced my hedge fund career. I feel like I started out, anybody who saw Wall Street, I was like, Bud Fox wanted to be some version of Gordon Gekko, and I ended up Martin Sheen. I'm like, that's probably where I should. So that's the perspective I'll come at that question with. Vinnie, the dominant part of my trading and portfolio management career, I was managing $1 billion plus in what was called emerging markets. And so sovereign fixed income of Latin American countries, Eastern Europe, Northern Africa, Asia. And really what I was doing was trading the debt that was defaulted on, because in the 60s and 70s, there was a whole bunch of people who said countries can't go bankrupt, companies can, so just print. And so when I read modern monetary theory and I see the kind of spending going on in Washington, both fiscally and monetary, given my background in emerging markets, I don't think this ends well. I don't know when it does. So when you start talking about what I'm nervous about is that cliff, because when perceptions change on the stability of a country, we're not ready for high interest rates. We're not ready for the kind of inflation that's coming. So in terms of the first part of your question, what do you think is going on? I'm very nervous, right? It's fine now, but it's very, like, maybe Ray Dalio is the only guy in the country besides maybe Paul Tudor Jones that can predict when it happens, but it doesn't end well if we don't grow out of this really fast. In terms of the comment about, well, where are they spending all this money? I think that is also a concern. Even when I see this infrastructure bill that came out, there are aspects of it that I applaud, but it's hard to read that infrastructure bill and think that you and I might be talking 10 years from now and saying, well, yeah, we have a lot of debt, but look at this amazing infrastructure. Look at these airports, look at these roads, look at these, like, isn't this great? Isn't this like, I think we're going to be 10 years from now saying, oh my gosh, what did we get for that? Like, so I share your concern in terms of the immediate. It's very necessary to get the economy going, and it's very necessary to get our labor demand going. It's already, okay, that's done, right? So now we need to be a little bit more judicious with our fiscal and monetary policy. But unfortunately, I don't think our federal politicians are in that mind frame. And so it's up for, I think, companies and nonprofits to step up. We know we have to evolve our education system. We can't count on politicians to do it. How can companies and nonprofits subsidize this change to skills-based hiring? How do we become more part of the solution? Because we can't sit by and wait for the elected officials to do it. We can't. If you want to have great workers, you want to have a good economy, we have to find other motions. And I think that's what we're advocating.
Fred, you made a comment in the workday session, which was kind of intriguing. You said these multiple stimulus checks have not affected people's desire to work, which seems contrary to what you hear, right? You're like, we're kind of getting a workforce used to supplemental checks. So that would suggest it's reducing the desire to go back to the workforce or work a little bit more, right? Tell us where you are finding, your opinion is different from that.
I love the fact of showing it's not even my opinion, it's just fact at this point. So if we focus on, let's take one sector as an example. From spring till summer, demand for job seekers for retail jobs gone up almost 200%, right? It's part of a COVID effect, part of a summer effect, it's a lot there. If I look at, we had a real experiment that was allowed for us to happen. Thank you, all the red state governors. And so we had 26 states remove extraordinary benefits coming into the summer. 24 kept them. Of the 26 states that removed these benefits, only 7 showed growth in job seeker activity above the national average. On the flip side, of the 24 states that kept the full benefits, 13 showed growth. The point is, when you go in here, there's no statistical significance about any causal, let alone really correlated factor. I'm sure somebody can squint and find a data mirage and try to print something. There's always people who can do that. There's nothing of statistical significance with regard to the extraordinary benefits. So it absolutely was my opinion in June. I think now we've got 2 months of a proof statement to say it's fact. There's no evidence that job seeker activity changes, whether you take the benefits away or leave them there. What people want is a higher clearing price. They want more wages have to go up for the same work that was done before. That's what's shifted. And it's hard for employers to get their head around the fact that the entire clearing price of the labor supply market has changed, but it has.
So when do we get, it seems like, I call them COVID cop-out excuses, but a lot of people are using labor shortages as a reason for cutting back on customer service, or hotels not cleaning beds every day, whatever, right? I mean, there's a lot of, you can see it seeping into the society. When do these labor shortages end? Is it when wages go up?
I think, well, a couple of things are going to happen. If I had to project, I think we'll get back to normal labor markets by spring or so. But I think there's something much deeper in your question, Vinnie, I'd probe, which is, in 2019, August of 2019, 181 CEOs, big guys, Jamie Dimon and Brian Moynihan, and they signed a stakeholder capitalism pledge versus shareholder capitalism pledge through the Business Roundtable, meaning we have to treat workers better, et cetera. Hasn't moved very much, right? I mean, there's a lot of good intentions. I'm not doubting intentions, but the facts are, there's still, hundreds of billions of shareholder buybacks. You can take 20% of that and do windfall bonuses to workers and fix that. So there hasn't really been a movement. If we look at analysts, why isn't there a movement? Because their stocks would get punished, right? So I'm saying that it's a higher clearing price, and you're making a very good observation that, okay, but why don't they just hire it instead of telling them they have bad customer service? I think it comes back to our system, because an analyst on Wall Street is going to punish the heck out of them if they see that wage inflation go up. Macro hedge fund traders, like I used to be, think wage inflation is bad, right? Like, oh, here comes interest rates and on. We're watching that, et cetera. We've got to change our vision here. We've got to say, you should be more worried that there's not more wage inflation for long-term stability. You saw the kind of unrest that we've seen over the last couple of years in our society. That's nothing compared to what will come if we keep pulling apart. We just got to do what the CEOs realize. We got to go to the stakeholder capitalism. We have to do more training. We have to do more investment. We have to do more wages. And then it's going to be better for everyone. Shareholders will have a stable thing. But I think the problem in the moment is we're lacking leadership, because a value isn't a value, a principle isn't a principle until it costs you, right? Until you're tested. So it's easy to say secular capitalism, but to actually increase your wages or actually take 10% of your dividend and give it to your workers instead of the dividend and hold your breath while the analyst over at Goldman's going to update your stock, that takes real leadership. And I'm hoping we get that, because if we do, then you and I will start to see real change. We'll start to see, oh, now we can do real infrastructure. Now we can have real societal change on skills. But we need that group, 181 CEOs. We need that group to step up and do it. And that's more structural. In the meantime, just tactically, yeah, I think things will shake out by the spring if they don't, but that's not going to be good long-term. It's just going to seethe underneath that more inequities, and that's not going to fix our Washington situation.
Well, you know, I have a slightly different perspective on that, in that I think we are not sharing enough information on how strong our middle class is, right? We've talked about this a little bit, but you know, our middle class, I've been doing some research for a possible book, has $35 trillion in 401k and IRA and pension fund income. You don't hear that. You hear the average American only has $500 in the bank, right? You don't hear how stable our middle core is, or that Costco has 90 million members with an average income of $100,000. That's solid middle class right there. So I think we need to find a way to communicate more to the younger people. Look, it's not going to happen overnight. You know, the middle class didn't get to 35 trillion by age 40, 45. I mean, they probably had only $20,000 in the bank, but it gradually kept growing. Now they're in the 50s. They can show that much in the way of higher 401ks and so on. So don't look for instant gratification. The economy will support you, but you got to be committed and keep looking for opportunities. Don't just sit back and say, I want to only do what I want to do, right? So.
Well, I love that you shared that, and I love to get to know you. I feel like this is a bogey at the end of Casablanca, the beginning of a beautiful friendship. So I would love to see that data and share with you the data we have, because I think we share the same objectives. And always good to meet somebody really smart that's got different data. I'm very worried on the other side. I'm worried about medians versus averages and how it's distributed and what that means in terms of also systemic issues, in terms of underneath the economy, in terms of the racial inequities and things. And when I look at things, you saw me talk about a chart the other day about most people born 80s or 90s are not making as much in real terms as their parents at 30. All those things to me are evidence of the anxiety that we see on Jobcase when people are really working hard. Why are they driving Uber and Lyft at night and DoorDash? These are not all, you know, Prop 22, I'm doing this instead of another job. I'm doing it in addition to other jobs, or people are working like crazy trying to cobble together, because then we adjusted core inflation metrics and pulled out rent and things. And so I see a different story happening that we're trying to amplify, but you and I both like data. So let's compare our data and find out what's really going on.
And I would say if you went back and looked at average 401k or IRA or retirement benefits at age 30 for somebody in the 40s, in the 50s or 60s, and look at them today, it'll look equally dismal for a 30-year-old 20 years ago, but it gradually keeps improving, right? So
what if you put college costs and housing costs on there too, in terms of how that paces?
I mean, go back to our earlier conversation, right? Not everyone needs to go to college. You know, don't burden yourself with that additional debt. So I mean,
it should be a choice, not a force, right? Like we want people to say, I like to do this better, not I really do like learning in college. I really do want to go there. I just can't afford it, right? I think it's not for everybody, but it shouldn't be gated because it's priced out for everybody, right? Like I said, we can have a lot of good conversations going forward.
We can. We should keep doing this every few months.
Yeah.
Any final thoughts?
Yeah, I guess I should close with something. One, I think it's so much to have people of your substance and knowledge focus in on workers and what we're trying to do. I mean, I think we all share the same objective for this country and success and all that. And there's different paths of getting there. I think you and I seem to come from a generation that remembers how that happened. We remember how Tip O'Neill and Reagan can fight during the day and get together at night. And we seem to have lost that. So the more people we can focus on shared objectives and figure out, okay, how should we spend in infrastructure? How should we do this? I think it's going to come from these kind of conversations and going to come from businesses and academia and think tanks and nonprofits, because we're in a current pocket where the leadership in the political sphere doesn't seem to be rising to the occasion we'd like. So I just think anybody who's listening to this, it's in everyone's long-term interest to have a really stable middle class, wherever it is, to have really stable workers, to have paths forward that have promise of upward mobility. And we just think there's things that people need to do. We both share the same objective, but we're also looking to learn, what can we do better? And so I guess the closing thought is Jobcase has a massive scale. We've got over 120 million members have registered. We have 20 million active unique. Governors, senators come to us when they want to get the word out. We're here to help anybody that's trying to help workers. And so reach out to us if we can help, if you have that objective.
Fantastic, Fred. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you,
Invigorating, scary yet invigorating, right? We got a big hill to climb. Thank you so much.
Thank you.